there folks, I have been meaning to film a vlog for quite some time now. I've been collecting footage for the past several weeks, I think for the past month or so, as far as b-roll to insert here and there throughout the vlog. However, I have not sat down in front of the camera to talk to you, to introduce the vlog. If you're new here, hi, my name is Lillian. I make videos about books and writing and creativity, and in this vlog I also plan for there to be a little bit of gardening content as well. It's getting to be about that time of year where we start some of our initial summer plants. I ended up not getting to do a full spring garden this year, but that's okay. But as far as the reading content goes, oh boy. So I'm currently at the moment technically reading 13 books. And I figured that this vlog would be a good way to sort of hold myself accountable and finish up a number of those and decrease the books that I'm currently reading. I also recently signed up to be a reviewer on NetGalley and requested a number of books to review, and shockingly I got a good number of them. So I currently have 10 books that I'm supposed to be reviewing for NetGalley as well. Some of the books that I'm currently reading are ones that I will be reviewing for NetGalley. Hello honey. Hi ma'am. If you're unfamiliar with NetGalley, it's a website where a lot of the major publishers will post ARCs of their upcoming releases, ARC standing for Advanced Reader Copies, basically soliciting reviews from various reviewers to sort of use as potential publicity or just get the word out about their upcoming books. And so as a reviewer, you can request to review a book, and the publisher will sort of look at your profile and deem whether or not they think you might be the right fit for the book, or if they decide to give you access to an ARC copy or not. And based on the number of ARCs you have been approved for and how many reviews you have actually posted, you will basically have an approval rating score on your profile. And at the moment mine is pretty low just because I've been approved for 10 books and I have reviewed 2 so far. So I think the purpose of this vlog is not only to decrease the number of books that I'm currently reading, but also to up my NetGalley score. Which will then in the future lead to a greater likelihood of getting approved for books that I'm interested in reviewing. But I have 4 to 6 books that I'm really looking to focus on in the next couple of days. They're either ones that I've already started or ones that I have audiobook copies out on Hoopla that are going to be returned in the next couple of days because my time limit is coming up. The 4 books that I have already started are 1, Notes from the Underground by Dostoevsky. I started this several months back thinking it would be a quick read, and I sort of got pulled into a number of other reads and also realized that I wanted to take my time with it. I believe this book is on my list of classics that I really would like to get to in 2023. It is a short read, but like I said, I would sort of like to take my time with it over the next couple of days. It is rather short. Next, I would really like to finally finish Trip to Echo Spring by Olivia Laing. I'm blanking on the subtitle of this, but this is Olivia Laing's creative nonfiction collection discussing writers and alcoholism. And the final 2 books are ones that I'm currently reading for NetGalley reviews, the first one being Tomb Sweeping, the second one being Reproduction, and for the life of me I cannot think of the authors' names off the top of my head unfortunately, but I will be popping the covers of them up on the screen for you. And lastly, the 2 audiobooks that I currently have out on Hoopla that will be returning soon are 1, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This was on the list of, I believe, classics I want to read in 2023, or my list of 23 in 2023. I made a number of lists for myself this year, but it's on one of those lists. I've been wanting to read it for a very long time. Thankfully, I don't actually know that much about the plot, which is surprising to me for a classic, but I'm glad that I'm sort of able to go in somewhat blind, but also just knowing that it is a very beloved classic. So looking forward to getting to that. And then the other audiobook that I currently have out is Erotic Stories for Punjabi Women. I've heard really good things about this book as well. So I will be taking you along with me over the next couple of days as I attempt to whittle down my currently reading pile and also work on my NetGalley score. And I will also be giving you a little sneak preview of what the garden currently looks like and what we are currently planning for it. But I think that is it for now, my friends. I'm going to get to reading. So I just came back from harvesting some greens from the garden, which unfortunately I wasn't able to film because I needed both hands, but just wanted to show you some of the stuff that I picked. We've got some parsley on top, some lettuce, and then somewhere buried under there is some kale. I'm going to take you out again with me because there were a few more things that I wanted to grab, And also I wanted to show you the garden at the moment. So there she is currently. We just had some major thunderstorms roll through and it's still spitting just a little bit, but I wanted to go out and grab some stuff for dinner. So this is the garden at the moment. It is in need of some tidying and some weeding, but these are all plants that have wintered over from this past winter. I planted them in the fall, and actually the green sprouts that you're seeing in the 2 rows before me are seeds that were mixed in with some squash that we put in our compost. So we have a bunch of squash sprouts. Most of them we will probably just till back under to feed the other plants we're going to plant, but I think we're going to try and transplant some of them elsewhere where they'll have more room to spread out. You'll also probably notice that we are experiencing quite a bit of a mushroom bloom at the moment. We've been getting a good amount of rain recently, and in that back corner over there where the green pots are is where it started, and I think I knocked some over accidentally the other day and then walked around the rest of the garden and likely spread the mushroom spores everywhere else. So see, we've got some right here. But over here on the left we have got some remaining carrots, and then as we pan over we've got some lettuce and kale and mustard greens. Got some bamboo poles that I'm going to try and make some trellises out of this year. This is a bed of garlic that my dad planted last fall, late summer maybe? I don't quite remember, but garlic is generally something that you plant before the winter, and winter's over, and then you can then pick it in the subsequent spring and summer. These bad boys are looking pretty good at the moment. Here is the kale bed, and the flowers that are sort of cut there were all coming off of the kale plants. They have started to bolt a little bit, and those flowers, if left be, would have eventually turned into seeds. But I wanted to clip those off, one, because I thought they were pretty, but also with some leafy green plants, the flavor and the texture of the leaves can start to change and become a little bit more bitter if you sort of let them go and flower. So I wanted to cut those off, and we'll bring them inside and actually put them in a vase because they are quite pretty. And as you can see, we have more mushrooms, and then here is a giant mound of parsley that has surprisingly survived really well. We have been using that quite frequently. I love using parsley in the kitchen. This is our asparagus bed that we've had middling success with. I think we're actually going to try moving where we plant asparagus elsewhere. For those who don't know, asparagus generally takes about 3 years before it reaches maturity to harvest, so it will be sort of a larger undertaking, but it's not doing as well as we hoped it would in this area. I think we get not enough sun for the asparagus to sort of really thrive. I think it's a little bit easier to see them here, but these are ones that have sort of gone a little bit past the eating prime, and they will actually just continue growing into sort of these grass reed type things. But yeah, that is asparagus. In here we have a bunch of strawberry plants that will start putting out fruit in late May, early June. And we have it covered because the birds will come and decimate strawberries otherwise. And back here we have this great bed of lettuce that has managed to survive, and we've been eating off of quite a lot recently. Back here we have more carrots and some parsnips as well. I think I'll probably be pulling these soon because they are starting to bolt a little bit. They're putting a bit more energy into their leafy greens rather than their roots. So it's better to pull them now and put in some stuff for the warmer weather. The giant plants that have the yellow flowers on them are actually Brussels sprout plants, and I planted them last fall. And unfortunately, we didn't get any actual Brussels sprouts come off of them, but they have ended up getting to a point where they are flowering and trying to produce some seed. I think I'm actually going to try eating some of the leaves because they are a brassica and therefore related to broccoli and kale, which you can obviously eat the leaves of. And as you can see, they have some very large, sturdy, dark green leaves, very similar to certain types of kale or collard greens. And next to that, we have this giant patch of arugula that has gone bonkers in the last month or so. I think we had some small clumps in, say, late February, and they have taken off into this giant patch of arugula, which I don't think we're going to be able to fully use up before we need to pull it out to put in some peppers and tomatoes here.
But if anyone has suggestions for how to preserve arugula or use a ton of it, please let me know in the comments. So as you can see, I've managed to almost fill this entire salad bowl, and here's my little hand for comparison. And as you can see, I've barely made a dent in this arugula. There is so much. And there we have more of the mushroom bloom and subsequent accident squash plants.
Hey there, so I wanted to do a reading check-in for this vlog. My reading priorities have changed a little bit. I've finished some books, had some life updates, some good news come my way, so let's talk about it. Firstly, I have switched up some of my reading priorities just based on when my reviews are going to be due for NetGalley. There were some books that I had forgotten were coming up on their publication date, and I needed to review. So I shuffled around some of the books that I was reading, and I will be prioritizing, instead of Tomb Sweeping and Reproduction, which I will be reading and reviewing fully at a later date. I definitely need to get through in the next couple of days The Wounded World by Chad Williams. I'm blanking on the subtitle of this book, but it has to do with W.E. Du Bois and the First World War, which when I saw that up on NetGalley's site, I instantly jumped to review it. For those who don't know, I love World War I history, very interested in it, but for the most part have studied it from the European viewpoint, focusing on sort of the events from 1914 to 1918 in Europe, and the US didn't enter World War I until the final year. I definitely want to remedy that. So the American presence in the First World War is something of a bit of a gap in my knowledge, and that's something that I would like to address, along with learning more about W.E. Du Bois himself. This book is a 500-page nonfiction book, so I think for that reason I have been a little bit intimidated. However, I have read the first 50 pages of this book, I think a month or so ago when I first got it, and have really been enjoying it. It is not a heavily academic nonfiction text, which I can definitely appreciate. Personally, I'm someone who also does enjoy heavily academic text about something that I'm deeply interested in, namely history, and or feminism and gender studies, but I can see the level of accessibility to the general public is much greater having this text not be heavily academic. It's still very informative. I'm learning a lot, but I think the style in which it is written will be much more accessible to the general public if it's something that is of interest to you. The next NetGalley book that I really need to finish reading and review is Denison Avenue. This is by Christina Wong. This was labeled initially as a graphic novel, and that's sort of why I jumped on it. I'll have popped the cover of that book up on the screen over here for you. And just based on the cover, I thought, you know, the illustration style looks really interesting. I would be really intrigued to read this book, and also having read the description of it. However, so far there really hasn't been any graphic novel elements, aside from the text sometimes being formatted in a very visual way to convey certain things within scenes. There haven't been any illustrations of scenes or graphic illustrations of any of the characters. Granted, I am about a third of the way through this book, but so far that's something that has definitely taken me off guard. The story itself is about an older Chinese Canadian who loses her husband and is sort of finding herself very lost within her community that is also experiencing a lot of turnover and a lot of change due to gentrification. I'm waiting to form sort of my final thoughts around this book, but at the moment I'm definitely feeling a little bit misled as far as how the book might have been presented on NetGalley, that it was a graphic novel. I don't have specific concrete examples of this off the top of my head, but just sort of the idea that I got after reading the description isn't matching up with my experience. But I think that's where I will leave that book for now. I'm holding out judgment until I actually finish the story, but you'll definitely hear me talk about these books in my monthly wrap-up after I finish them. As far as the 2 audiobooks that I had out for my library that I had wanted to get to in the last week, I've sort of had to put to the side and put on the back burner for now, and I will definitely get to them in the future. I did start listening to Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I was really enjoying that experience. I got about 20% of the way through the audiobook, and just had certain things come up in life, was juggling certain things, and just thought, it's better probably for me to put this down and come back to it when I can really give it my full attention, the sort of attention that it deserves, as opposed to rushing through it to say I completed it. I was definitely enjoying the experience of listening to that audiobook. It's definitely already getting within the first 20% of the book that I'd listened to the sort of modern Gothic vibes that du Maurier is known for. I have read Jamaica Inn by du Maurier in the past, and I think I'm getting along with Rebecca quite a bit more than I did that book. And then the book that I ended up managing to finish is Trip to Echo Spring on Writers and Drinking, I think is the subtitle, but it is Olivia Laing's creative nonfiction book about authors and alcoholism, and she talks mainly about 5, I believe American authors who are well known, like F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hemingway, John Cheever, as well as 2 other authors who I'm blanking on their names at the moment. However, I did like this book. So far, it is not my favorite Olivia Laing book that I have read. I read and finished The Lonely City earlier this month, and I think for me that was a much stronger book in the way that it came together and the way that Laing was able to weave in her own personal reflections and experiences with the artists that she examines in that text. Granted, The Lonely City is a later work by Laing. She has obviously developed as a writer, but I think also for Trip to Echo Spring, there is definitely an element of distance in that book that I didn't feel was present in The Lonely City. And I think part of that comes from, and Laing mentions some of her past experience with alcoholism in her family and how that affected her childhood. And she even mentions sort of earlier on in the book as to why she didn't investigate or write about female authors struggling with alcoholism, because for her it hit too close to home. And I think Trip to Echo Spring, while it's a very interesting book, for me I was sort of able to tell that for Laing, this was definitely a topic that she was very intrigued by and sort of needed to find out more about and find a deeper understanding for herself in order to resolve and put to rest some of the unknown elements of her childhood, or just try to gain a deeper understanding of alcoholism itself and how it can affect people. But on the other hand, I think there is definitely a level of distance that she puts in between herself and the topic that she is writing about. So she is exploring the lives of these authors, but she is also, in the process of exploring their lives, writing about the journey, the road trip that she took across America to various homes and haunts of these famous authors, making connections between these authors and their experiences and the works that they put out with the places that they inhabited. Like I said, I enjoyed Trip to Echo Spring, but I wasn't as blown away as I was with The Lonely City. I think in the end I gave Trip to Echo Spring 3 out of 5 stars. I would still recommend it if you are interested in creative nonfiction that deals with that topic, or if you're interested in learning more about some of the authors that she investigates. But so far it is not my favorite Laing book that I have encountered. And then as far as personal life updates, I had some really wonderful news last week. I was offered and accepted a job that I had really been keeping my fingers and toes crossed for. I was really excited about and was really thrilled when I got the job offer. So I'll be starting a new job on Monday. I think this video should be going up Saturday, so the Monday following I will be starting a new job. So on the one hand, I am really thrilled about that, but have sort of been taking the last couple of days to, prepare for that, get things that I needed, figuring out commute and travel routes, meal prepping, all that good stuff. Trying to get my daily rhythms and routines sort of back in line with getting up at the time that I need to travel to work, but also taking the last couple days here before I actually start work, relish the free time that I have before I start working a 9 to 5 again. And yeah, it's been a bit of an emotional roller coaster. A lot of it has been really positive, really excited. I won't say that I'm nervous. I am a little bit nervous, but mainly excited. But there is still that little element of anxiety of starting something new. But I think I will try to do at least one more final check-in before I close out this vlog, but just wanted to update you on a few things. Also, in the last video that I posted, I had a few comments asking about the tattoo that I have. So it's an anatomical heart made out of waves and is definitely inspired by a piece of art that I saw several years ago and just absolutely fell in love with. The tattoo itself I got done 4 years ago and it has held up really well. It has aged really well. I've definitely been careful with it and put sunscreen on it as much as I can. But the ocean is definitely something that has played a huge part in my life even before I was born. And also the, I guess, metaphor or the symbol of wearing your heart on your sleeve. And then also sort of a vague, at least for myself, mental nod to Sylvia Plath's line, I am, I am, I am. I definitely have plans for more tattoos in the future, but this is the first one that I have and I really quite like it. Okay, it is my cat's dinner time and she is very hungry, so I'm gonna go feed her and I will let you know any future book updates as well. Hello again. I think that this is gonna be my final check-in before I close out this vlog, but wanted to do a final little update on my reading progress. I haven't managed to finish any of the books that I mentioned, but I have made some progress. I'm still having similar feelings about Denison Avenue. I'm still slowly making my way through that. I'll need to have that finished before the end of the month so I can write my review for NetGalley. So I have about a day and a half left for that. Notes from Underground I'm also slowly but surely making my way through. I think initially I had thought that it would be a quick read, but once I got into it I realized, oh no, this is a bit more dense than I had originally thought. And it's certainly much more of a philosophical text than I had originally understood it to be, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm not a quick reader when it comes to philosophical texts. I think Notes from Underground is certainly a book that I would have really appreciated getting to study in school, getting to talk about it with other people, getting to learn about context from a teacher who knows the text. I think annotating this text is one of the things that's helping me comprehend it and sort of mentally follow the narration that our main character is spilling out. Based on my experience and from what I understand of the book, it is sort of this long monologue from this unnamed narrator, man from the underground, philosophizing and relating parts of his own experience to have the reader think and question some of the philosophical movements that were prevalent in Dostoevsky's time. He definitely offers criticism of the movement of rationalists that sort of came out of the aftermath of the earlier 19th century where there was a lot more romanticism, aestheticism, but at the same time he also definitely offers critique to the utopian thinkers as well, sort of citing the quixotic nature of human nature. And I think so far I'm certainly appreciating this book now that I've really started to sink my teeth into it. I don't know if I'm fully enjoying it, just on a personal note, but I'm finding it very interesting. I can definitely appreciate what Dostoevsky has created, and I think that's where I will leave Notes from the Underground for now. You'll hear more about it whenever I do finish reading it and talk about it in a monthly wrap-up. And then finally, the big chunky nonfiction history book that I'm currently reading for NetGalley and reviewing at the end of the month, The Wounded World by Chad Williams. I think I mentioned previously that this history nonfiction book is not one that's highly academic. It is very much accessible to sort of your average reader who's interested in history, and that certainly continues to be the case. Based on the description of this book and what I've read so far, it is talking about W.E. Du Bois, how he rallied the Black community in America to quote-unquote close ranks and support the US war effort, attempt to become officers and potentially enlisted soldiers to prove their worth, that they were worthy of full citizenship, that they were willing to put their lives on the line for a country that clearly did not have their back. And Du Bois very idealistically thought that this would sort of prove to the US at large, but mainly the US government, that Black men were worthy of citizenship and would be effectively a countermeasure to a lot of the Jim Crow legislation that had been passed in the South. But the summary of this book notes that this was a decision that Du Bois regretted for the rest of his life. For 2 decades after the First World War, Du Bois attempted to write a definitive history of the Black experience in the First World War, but never actually completed the book. And it sounds like further into this book, the author and historian is going to more closely examine some of the things that Du Bois was grappling with, things that he was attempting to write in this book, but also internally process and atone for this decision that he made. Like I said, this is definitely a very readable history text. It's not full of jargon or sort of dense theory by any means. I'm certainly learning a lot. There are a few, I think maybe personal preferences that I'm sort of noting, and I will definitely obviously withhold judgment until I'm fully finished reading the book, but there are some things that I think for personal preference I would have preferred if some of the chapters were structured a little bit more. In some ways it feels like every other paragraph we are sort of hop skipping around to other points in the timeline or other ideas or reflections from Du Bois, and it feels a little bit like doing this. For right now, I'm definitely reserving judgment until I've seen it through, but those are my sort of current thoughts on the text. But I think that's where I'm going to leave my thoughts on the books that I'm reading in this vlog. If you're interested in hearing about my final thoughts on these books and any future books that I read, and you haven't already subscribed, feel free to do so. I attempt to post once a week on this little channel, and obviously I love talking about books and writing and creativity and also gardening, which, speaking of, I will be planting some of the first rounds of beans and okra in the garden today. But if you enjoyed the gardening content, let me know. I'm happy to include more of that in upcoming vlogs, and I'm also thinking about potentially making some YouTube shorts that give you little snippets and sneak peeks of what's going on in the garden. But with that, I think I need to wrap this vlog up fully and get it edited and out to you on this Saturday. If you enjoyed watching this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow. I really appreciate it. I hope you all are doing well, that you are enjoying what you are reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.